Over the last few days, there's been a lot of talk about could the Detroit Pistons actually take on the New York Knicks in the playoffs? Do they actually have a chance against the Knicks in the playoffs? Or, as a lot of Knicks people are saying, are people just hating on New York again? We'll talk about this matchup. Could the Pistons actually take down New York in today's episode, Locked On Pistons Podcast? Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Khahil. You can find me over on Twitter at Khahil. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Later on, I want to talk about who would be the X factor for the Detroit Pistons in the playoffs. And also later on in the podcast, like we usually do every week, I want to take a look ahead at the Pistons schedule. What are must wins? Are there any? Who do they need to absolutely win against? Some tough games they're going to have, some streaks, etc. We always do that every single week, so we'll do that a little bit later as well. Also, I want to let you guys know if you want to watch the Pistons games with me and the rest of the fan base, I'll link the playback room down below in the description where you can join the room and watch games live with, like I said, myself and the Pistons fan base. And if you want to join my Substack and get some of my written content, some of the film breakdowns we've been doing, it's been some daily content over there. I appreciate all the support. If you want to join, you can. I'll link that down below as well. 50% off all subscriptions all the way until March 31st. Get a subscription for as little as $3 a month. But let's go ahead and get into this. This whole Detroit versus New York thing is really like taking off. It's really taking off. I guess this is what comes with being a playoff team. This is what comes with when your team is basically solidified to be in the playoffs. People are going to start talking about matchups rather early, and then people are going to start feeling disrespected. There's going to be a lot of talk about one side, the other side. Do they even deserve this? Are you just hating? All this kind of stuff, and especially with a team like New York, who does have a lot of passionate fans in the media. There does seem to be a little bit of hating that goes on towards New York because they're fun to make fun of. And I think that's what a lot of Knicks fans and a lot of people in the Knicks community I've seen over the last few days feel like it's happening with this talk. There's been a lot of talk from Udonis Haslem starting it last week to a couple other NBA media members, along with people at our very own network at Locked On. Heck, even James Edwards III, former Detroit Pistons beat writer. I'm going to have to get you on the podcast, James, to talk about this. But he just wrote an article for The Athletic. He is now the beat writer for New York Knicks, by the way, if you don't know this. He ranked who should the Knicks be afraid of playing the most, or who should they want to play the most out of Milwaukee, Detroit, and Indiana. He had Detroit second. And in his article, he said that he felt like if the Pistons were a year more experienced, he thinks they would be the least likely team that the New York Knicks would want to play against. And I see a lot of people getting upset about that on the other end, on the New York end. So, could the Pistons actually take down the Knicks? I think they could. I want to start this off by saying this. I've been very consistent with this, and I'm not moving off of this. The Pistons are not going to be favorites in whatever matchup they get in the first round. They will be the underdogs in whatever matchup they get, and that is fair. That is probably the right thing to do. If they go against Milwaukee, we've talked about this. If they go against Milwaukee, they've lost to Giannis 11 straight times. They're not going to have the best player on the floor. Even without Dame, going against Giannis, the Pistons don't have anyone that can guard Giannis. They don't have anyone to really offset the rim protection and size the Bucks have. There's a reason why they've beaten them so many times. They shouldn't go against Milwaukee. Is going to be a very, very hard series for the Pistons to win against. Indiana or New York, though, I think they could get them, but if they're favorites, 100% get it. I will say this, though. I'll say this, and again, I'm not picking the Pistons to win. I do think it's most likely that the Pistons will have a tough out in the first round, but eventually lose, which still will be a great season. If they're able to upset a team in the first round, that would be fantastic. But obviously the money is on that the Pistons will just be a tough out in the first round. I will say this, though. I think people aren't giving enough respect and analysis to how legit the Pistons are in the first round against either the Indiana Pacers or the Knicks. There's no one that's going to convince me the Pistons have a chance against the Bucks. I'm going to keep saying it over and over. Giannis will be the best player in the series. They've lost to him 11 straight times. They have no one that can check him. Ausar can't check him. Anyone you put on him is going to get in foul trouble. The Pistons don't have answers to what the Bucks can do. Their size, rim protection, shooting, they just don't have answers for it. It's not going to happen. But if they get matched up with the Knicks or Pacers, I don't feel like there's really been a lot of fair analysis about how serious the Pistons should be taken in a series like that. Since January 1st, that's where I'm going to cut it off at. Because the team before January 1st is not the same team the Pistons are right now. And I'm not saying that just as for example, when a team just starts playing better and you're like, okay, well, the team's been playing better since then, so let's go ahead and cut it off there. No, this is literally a different team since January 1st because they didn't have Ausar Thompson at the beginning of this year. They didn't have Ausar Thompson really in December off of a minutes restriction where he was actually playing for real. January 1st is when Ausar Thompson started playing and was inserted into the starting lineup. They then did not have Jaden Ivey. For the first 2 months they did. They haven't had him since January 1st. Instead, they've had Ausar Thompson. This is a completely different, let's not say a completely different team, but a much different team from who they were the first 2 months since January 1st. So the team you've seen since January 1st, that is who the Pistons are. It's not before January 1st. So that's where my cutoff will be. Since January 1st, who do you think has a better offensive rating? The New York Knicks or the Detroit Pistons? Since January 1st. By the way, it's a 41 game sample size for the Pistons. 38 game sample size for the Knicks. Who do you think has a better offensive rating since January 1st? The Detroit Pistons. They have the 9th best offense in the NBA. Since January 1st. They have a top 10 offense. They are 9th best offense since January 1st. New York, they have the 17th best offense. Now, a lot has been made of New York's offense, how tremendous their offense is. And I do believe in their offense. Their offense, they have a lot of skillful, talented, especially with Cat. They do, for sure. However, since January 1st, it's just not actually playing out to reality that they're better than the Pistons on offense. But I think most people who watch the Pistons, and if you get into the numbers, we've broke it down in the podcast, they're a half-court, the Pistons. Their half-court offense is not that great. It's about how much offense they are creating in transition. They're first in fast break points. They're around first and second in points in the paint. We've talked about this, how much they play in transition. That's what's feeding their offense. So, okay, if you want to say the half-court offense, the Knicks will be better than the Pistons, I'll agree with that. I can agree with that. But overall offense, fast break does count. Transition does count. And while there isn't a common saying that the playoffs do slow down, there's been some data to suggest that's not actually completely true. But we'll see how it plays out in the playoffs. Either way, Pistons have a better offensive rating since January 1st. Who do you think has a better defensive rating since January 1st? The Pistons are second in the NBA in defensive rating, 109.6. Only the Oklahoma City Thunder have a better defense than the Pistons since January 1st. The Knicks, they have the 16th best defense. Okay. So on both offense and defense since January 1st, which is now a 3-month sample size, over a 37-game sample, the Knicks are a middle-of-the-pack NBA team, and the Pistons have a top 10 defense and a top 10 offense. Top 10 in both categories. Since January 1st, 41-game sample size. Where do they rank in net rating? Since January 1st. Where do they rank in net rating? Where do you think the Pistons rank? They have the 4th best net rating in the NBA since January 1st. Only behind the Boston Celtics, Cleveland Cavaliers, and OKC Thunder. Where do the Knicks rank? 15th in net rating, just above. They're the final team to be above a positive net rating at 0.9. The Pistons are outscoring teams by 7.1 points per 100 possessions since January 1st. Am I sitting here saying the Pistons are a championship team? No. Are they going to be the favorites against the Knicks? No. Are they going to be the favorites in any series they play in the first round? No. Am I saying any of that? I'm not. But is it far more likelier than people are making it seem that the Pistons could win a first-round series against the Pacers and Knicks? It 100% is. We are now entering over just about 3 months of the Pistons being a top 5 or top 3 defense, top 2 defense, and a top 10 offense. They're one of a handful of teams that show up in top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. Only a handful. And the Knicks are now operating on multiple months of being a middle-of-the-pack offense, a middle-of-the-pack defense. Their best player is coming off a sprained ankle that has kept him out for weeks, and we don't know when he's going to exactly come back. Will he make it back before the regular season even ends? And if he does, right before the regular season ends, how close to 100% is he actually even going to be in the playoff series? Combined with that, Cat hasn't been always the most consistent guy in the playoffs. Now, that's a hard argument to actually make for the Pistons fans because the Pistons have never been to the playoffs. So you don't know if they're going to be good playoff players. So I'll stay away from that one. But Jalen Brunson, we don't know how healthy he's going to be. We don't know. We don't know if he's even going to play before the regular season ends. The Pistons, knock on wood, so far, are going to be entering into the playoffs pretty damn healthy. Playing the best brand of basketball over the last 3 months. And this is the part that really has really upset the Knicks community. They're really up in arms about this. Because a lot of people keep saying that the Pistons could have the best player in the series. This is why I need Knicks people to understand. Is Cade better than Jalen Brunson? I think a lot of Pistons fans would make the argument that he is. I think a lot of Pistons people would make the argument that he is. I think there is a legitimate argument to say he is better than Jalen, or he was better than Jalen Brunson this year. Is he for sure better than Jalen Brunson? Are they on two completely different levels? No. They are on the same level. And could Jalen Brunson be a better basketball player than Cade Cunningham right now? 100%. You could make the argument that he's a better basketball player than Cade Cunningham right now. I'm not saying that you can't. But the point is, which I think a lot of Knicks people in the media is going completely over their heads, is that it's not the point of, Cade's far and away better than Jalen Brunson. No, that's not the point. The point is that in a series against the Bucks, there is no argument for Cade over Giannis. Giannis will be the best player on the floor every single game that is played, and there's nothing Cade can do about that. In a series against the Knicks, for two guys that are in the same tier, Cade can outplay Jalen Brunson, and he can be the best player in that series. He can be the best player on the floor in all of the games. He has outplayed them in Madison Square Garden twice this year. So is Cade just far and away better than Jalen Brunson? No, that's disrespectful to Brunson. That is true. Jalen Brunson's a damn great player, and him and Cade are on the same level. But can Cade be the best player in that series? He can be. Doesn't mean he will. And Jalen Brunson, for sure, he's been an outstanding, absurd playoff performer. But one, is Jalen Brunson going to be 100% healthy? And two, we don't know how great of a playoff performer Cade could be because we haven't seen him yet. What we have seen, though, is him walk into Madison Square Garden twice and outplay you guys. So to act like this wild idea that the Pistons could upset the Knicks in the first round, to act like it's this wild idea that Cade could outplay Jalen Brunson in a playoff, that he could be better than Jalen Brunson, as if they're not on the same level of player, and there is an argument for both sides that their player A or player B, is better than the other. To act like that's some wild concept doesn't match the reality, doesn't match the numbers since January 1st, and it doesn't match the eye test of what we've watched since January 1st. Again, I'm going to put a heavy emphasis on, we don't even know if Jalen Brunson is going to be 100% healthy in the playoffs. And if he is not, I'm telling you right now, if Jalen Brunson is not 100% healthy, I will come on this podcast and pick the Pistons to beat the Knicks if they match up in the first round. Jalen Brunson better be 100% healthy. And I want him to be 100% healthy. That's nowhere near me trying to act like I'm happy a dude's hurt at all. I want Jalen Brunson to be 100%. I want everyone to be 100% healthy when they play in the playoffs so we can get the best basketball possible. But the fact of the matter is, he's coming off an ankle sprain, still hasn't played. If he's not 100% healthy, I will be coming on this podcast. I will be telling you guys the Pistons are going to upset the Knicks. But overall, my overall point of this is to act like the Pistons are it's so wild of a concept that the Pistons could beat the Knicks, even though if they're not favorites. I'm not saying they should be. Act like it's so wild that they could beat them doesn't match what we've seen over the last 3 months. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil. How likely is it that the Pistons could upset the New York Knicks in the first round? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil. When we come back, when the Pistons get to the playoffs, who is the X factor for them? We'll talk about that coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. With tournament games happening almost every single day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. As I've told you guys many of times, I've been using FanDuel for years. Use it maybe a little too often. My wife would tell me. But it's extremely fun to use, super easy to use, super self-explanatory, but obviously, most importantly, it's super fun to use. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. And again, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So visit FanDuel.com, get in on the college hoops action all tournament long with FanDuel. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. If you haven't already, you want to check out the Playback Room, join us, me, and the rest of the Pistons fan base for all the Pistons games. You can watch with us live. I'll link it down below. You can join the room. Also, if you want to join us over on Substack, where I produce daily content for the Detroit Pistons, written content, also the film breakdowns. We had a film breakdown recently on Jalen Duren as a pick-and-roll ball handler. I just wrote about Cade. I just wrote about Tobias Harris, Ausar Thompson. My last one was about Ausar Thompson's struggles and how they can minimize those struggles, how you can get better, how to overcome these struggles. And he started to do it a little bit in this last game against the Spurs. But if you want to check that all out, I'll link that down below for you guys as well. Again, like I said earlier, 50% off all subscriptions until March 31st. Who is the X factor for the Detroit Pistons in the playoffs when they get there? Not if, when, because they're going to the playoffs, guys. The Pistons are going to the playoffs, not the play-in. They are going to the playoffs. Still crazy to say, to feel that confident in saying that on March 26th. Not even April yet, and you can just basically pencil in the Pistons as a playoff team. And a team fighting for home court advantage is still crazy to me. It's just crazy. But, like James Edwards wrote, and there's this article today, the Pistons are a very young team. And this is going to be, outside the veterans, this is going to be their first time ever in the playoffs, where the game does, you do allow a little bit more physicality, where the games do get reffed a little bit differently. When the games do, even though there's an argument to be made that it's not as severe as people like to make it out to be, it does slow down to a certain degree. The game does feel a little different. I will say this, the main difference that young teams are going to run into, like the Pistons, that you're going to see is that every possession matters so much more. The Pistons can have a wonky first quarter in the regular season and come back in the second half and, try to pull something off. Have a bad second quarter. Have a few bad plays stretch in the first quarter, call timeout, and come back. That doesn't happen as much in the play. Every single possession matters so much more in the playoffs. And the Pistons do turn the ball over a lot. So that is going to be a concern for the Pistons because taking care of the ball is so much more important in the playoffs versus in the regular season. But the X factor for the Pistons, you could say turnovers would be the X factor, even though they're not a player. If we're going to say a player, I think this is far and away an easy answer. And I'd love to hear from you guys if you guys disagree about this. But I think far and away the easiest answer, X factor, is Ausar Thompson. It absolutely is him. Cade is not. He doesn't fit the definition of this answer. Obviously, Cade has to play well. He's not an X factor though. He is the factor. So he's not going to fall in this. It's everyone else. It 100% is Ausar Thompson. At the game when I was courtside the other day, talking with a few people there, people sitting around me, we were talking about this, and I don't know how anyone could come to a different answer. For this reason, pretty easily. Ausar Thompson is so important to the Pistons' success because of what he does defensively. If they were to go against a Jalen Brunson, you are putting Ausar Thompson on Jalen Brunson. If Ausar Thompson cannot guard Jalen Brunson, if he gets in foul trouble, if he cannot check Jalen Brunson and Jalen Brunson goes off, the Pistons will not win that series. If they go against the Indiana Pacers and you put Ausar on Tyrese, or you put Ausar on Siakam, and either one of them still continue to go off and Ausar gets into foul trouble, you have no one else that has a chance of guarding those guys. And you will not win that series. We've talked about the impact. I mean, I've went through this over and over on the podcast. I've read you guys, and I think I need to read the numbers again for the Pistons on-off with Ausar since January 1st. The starting lineup just obliterating teams in their minutes. The Cade, Ausar, THJ, Tobias, Duren. That lineup continuing to obliterate teams in their minutes. Actually, you know what? While we're talking about this, I'll get the lineup. I'll get the lineup data for you. I'll keep going, but I'll get the lineup data so people don't think, for first-time listeners, don't think I'm just talking out the side of my neck. But Ausar Thompson is so important to what they do defensively, and that's where they hang their hat on. Again, like we mentioned in the first segment, they don't have a fantastic half-court offense. They have a good offense because they get stops and they run in transition. And a large majority of that, the reason why they've been able to do that since January 1st, is because Ausar Thompson's been healthy. And it's because when he's at the top of his game and not in foul trouble, he helps the Pistons get out in transition. He creates turnovers. He creates steals. He creates fast break opportunities. And they allows them to push. And Cade's been playing a lot more faster since Ausar was put into the lineup. And now you got Ausar and Duren running. So all of that really comes back to Ausar Thompson needing to play well. And I'll credit one of you guys. I forget who it was, but if you're watching this, you know I'm shouting you out. Someone commented this on the last episode, and they're 100% right. They were talking about Ausar Thompson being a big X factor for the Pistons in the playoffs, and that the Pistons need to figure out a counter to what the Mavs did. Again, the Pistons lost to the Mavs last week, a team they should never lose to. What was one of the reasons why they lost? Well, they couldn't get stops. Well, why couldn't they get stops? Because they didn't have Ausar Thompson on the floor. And why didn't they have Ausar Thompson on the floor? Well, because the Mavs counter to Ausar on the offensive end was to put Dwight Powell on him and have Dwight Powell basically just sit in the paint. As we said on the podcast the day after that, the Pistons cannot allow teams to strategically get Ausar off the floor because teams know that Ausar Thompson's that important to their success. If they can scheme him off of the floor, they will be able to score lights out. They will be able to score 120, 130 plus if they can scheme Ausar Thompson off the floor. So the Pistons need to make it a priority, a main game plan in the playoffs, to where they do not allow other teams to scheme a way to scheme Ausar off the floor, or they will not get any stops, and they won't win any playoff series. They have to find a way, which we've talked about many ways they can do it, and they've done it throughout the year. But in the playoffs, like we've talked about with the Knicks, there's a possibility the Pistons may put Jalen Duren on Josh Hart and then put Tobias on Cat and allow Jalen Duren to roam off because they're not worried about Josh Hart. That's going to be a struggle for the Knicks. The Knicks are going to have to figure out a way to make sure that teams can't strategically get Hart off the floor and for them to still use what makes him so important to them, which is his defense. The starting lineup, by the way, that I'm talking about, that's obliterating teams in their minutes. 466 minutes played. They're outscoring teams by 6.81 points per 100 possessions. That's top 10 best of any lineup that's played at least 400 minutes. They have a 110 defensive rating. That's a top 5 defense. They have a 117 offensive rating. That's a top 15, 10-ish offense. This lineup has been obliterating teams. They need Ausar to not only stay out of foul trouble, they need him to be electric on the defensive end of the floor, and they need him to be on top of his game offensively, because if he, because it's not just the coaching staff had to utilize him in pick and rolls, in screening action, in DHOs, him as a ball handler, a bunch of different things they can do with him in the half-court offense where he's a part of actions rather than just standing in the corner. They can do those things. But also Ausar has to make it to where he's playing well enough. He's finishing these dump-offs. He's making the right play in the short roll. He's finishing on his drives to the rim. He's making the right play. He's playing well himself in the half court. He cannot allow teams. He cannot allow, whether it's the Pacers, the Bucks, or the Knicks, to scheme him off the floor. Because that's what every team's game plan is against the Pistons. Is this guy is too important. He can wreck our offense. And they love to get on transition because of what he can do defensively. If we can get him off the floor, we can beat them. That's what every team's game plan will be. That will be what you see from teams in the playoffs. If JB Bickerstaff can come up with a game plan, which we've seen them do this year, they just go away from it at times, but if JB Bickerstaff can craft up a game plan that when teams try to do that whole, okay, we'll put our big man on Ausar and just sag off of him, have counters to it. Have counters to it to where you can succeed still within the half court. Now, you can put together a scheme. If Ausar doesn't play well, doesn't matter. Like we wrote about him on the Substack, his finishing before March 5th, 70% around the rim. Fantastic. Since then, it was around 59%. So that's on Ausar. So they got both meet halfway. JB has to drop a good game plan, and Ausar has to play like he was for the first 2.5 months of this starting lineup, and like he just played against the Spurs. He has to play that way. If he's able to do that, the Pistons will have a chance to win their first round series because that's how impactful he is on their defense. If he gets played off the floor, the Pistons' offense within the half court is not good enough to score with other teams in the playoffs. It will not be good enough to hang with the Indiana Pacers within the half court. It's not. It's not good enough. Their half court offense is not good enough to hang with the New York Knicks throughout a 7-game series. Is their offense good enough combined with their half court offense with Cade, and then also how much they create in transition, in fast breaks, off defensive rebounds, off steals? Will they win off that? 100%, and that's what they've been winning off of the last 3 months. They need Ausar on the floor to be able to do that. He cannot get in foul trouble. He has to play well himself offensively, and the Pistons cannot allow teams to just scheme him off the floor. Spotting him up in the corner cannot be the option. Cannot be the option in the playoffs. That's why I think the X factor is. I think it's very clear who the X factor is for the Pistons to win in the playoffs. But if you guys disagree, who is the X factor for the Detroit Pistons come playoff time? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil. When we come back, we're going to take a look ahead at the Detroit Pistons schedule and how early could they clinch a playoff bid. We'll talk about that coming up. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free to available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, let's look ahead. And like I've mentioned you guys many times before, down below, description, check it out. Playback room, watch Pistons games with us. Substack if you want to see some more Pistons content from myself. Written content, film breakdowns. Really good stuff over there. All right, the Pistons are coming off this win against the Spurs. They have 9 games left in their season. 9 games left in their season. I can't believe this season honestly has went by this fast. It's crazy. In just a few weeks, we're going to be sitting here saying, this Pistons basketball was back. I know I'm going to say it. Last year, I'll be honest with you guys. I'll be completely honest. I'll keep it $150 with you guys. When the Pistons season ended last year, as someone who covers the team has to make episodes and cover them every single day throughout the year, whether they're playing or not. When their season ended, I was like, thank God, man. Like, they don't have to watch that no more, man. After last year, like, I was not disappointed at all when the season ended. I was like, okay, we can start talking about off-season content. We can talk about anything else, but I can't, like, I'm not going to miss watching that product. When this season ends, I'm going to be pretty sad because this was a fun season. I have enjoyed very much watching this team every single game. It's been a lot of fun. So, and I know a lot of Pistons fans are going to immediately start missing watching Pistons basketball in just a few short weeks. Like literally the day after, whenever their season officially ends. It's going to be tough. I can't believe the season's already flown by like this. But, all right. They are currently, as I'm recording this, now the Bucks are playing right now. I'm recording this before the end of their game, so I can't predict what's going to happen. The Pacers are also actually playing. When I'm recording this right now, the Pacers are down by 2 to the Lakers with 4 minutes left. I don't know how this game's going to end. But as I'm recording this, the Pistons are tied for 5th with the Milwaukee Bucks, and they're 2 games behind the Indiana Pacers with 9 games to go. What I think the Pistons want to do, the Pistons are going to avoid Milwaukee. And I don't think they have to be too concerned about that. Because Milwaukee, if anything, is going to fall to 6. The only way that the Pistons could get Milwaukee is if Milwaukee goes on a good stretch and jumps to 4. And without Dame for the rest of the year because of the blood clot health condition, my goodness, I couldn't say that for a minute, which I'm praying for Dame. It sucks to hear about that. It's terrible. But without Dame the rest of the year, I don't think they're going to go on a run to get up to 4. I don't think the Pacers are going to fall below them. The only real possibility for the Pistons to match up against the Bucks is if the Pistons get up to 4, Pacers suck and get down to 6, and the Bucks stay at 5. The only two, I feel like the real 2 outcomes that are possible for the Pistons right now are the Knicks or Pacers. So I think they're good. Those are the 2 matchups they'd rather have anyways. If they could get home court advantage, though, over the Pacers and play them in a 4-5 matchup, I think that would be really good. I think they would really like that. However, they're going to have to close out a really, really tough end to their season, which is why the game against the Mavericks was such a killer to lose, just an absolute killer to lose. Why that game on March 13th on 3-1-3 day was such a killer to lose against the Wizards. Because the end of their season is absolutely dreadful. That's 2 games the Pistons could have won, should have won, not could have, should have won. And that's two games that would catch them up with the Pacers. They'd be right behind the Pacers. Literally, I think a half game behind the Pacers, technically. And then ahead of the Bucks by a game and a half, 2 games. But they weren't able to do it. It is what it is. But that's why those games matter so much. That's why those games you are supposed to win matter so much. Because now the end of the season, next, against Cleveland on Friday, like, that's incredibly hard. Then you got Minnesota, who, just like the Pistons, are playing incredibly well over the last 2 months. Playing incredibly well. Anthony Edwards is playing exceptionally well over the last 2 months. Then, right after that, you got OKC, which has been the best team in the NBA start to finish this year. Not great. That's a 3-game gauntlet. I don't know if the Pistons win 1 game in that gauntlet. If they're able to go 1-2, you live with it. But that's a gauntlet. Then you got the Raptors, which should be, I don't want to say a gimme game because we've seen the Pistons not be able to execute gimme games, but an easier game to win. You expect the Pistons to win that one. The Grizzlies, who are a good team as well, dealing with some injuries on and off, but can the Pistons win that game? Yeah, but that's going to be a tough one. The Kings, who are not playing well, the Pistons are a better team than, but they're not just some pushover. They're also going to be playing for playing seeding. But the Pistons can win that one. Then they end the season, and I think this is going to be big with playoff seeding. These last 3 games are going to be huge. Then they got the Knicks, the Bucks, and the Bucks back to back to back to the end of the season. That's going to be huge. That's going to be huge at the end of the season. And look, in the final 9 games, there's only 1 game that I feel like maybe 2 that you look at and say Pistons should win that one. That one should be a gimme. The Raptors and Kings game. I think those are the only 2 games Pistons fans can look at that and be like, they should win those games. Outside of that, each game outside of that is going to be like a barn burner. It's going to be tough as nails to pull out wins against the Timberwolves, the Thunder, the Cavs, the Knicks, the Bucks on a back-to-back, the Grizzlies. Like, this is a brutal end to the Pistons season. Brutal. Absolute brutal. And that's, again, like I said, that's why the Mavs game was so important for this team. That's why the Wizards game was so important from them to win because of this gauntlet of an end of the season that they have. Now, there's another way to look at it, though. It is a brutal end of the season, and it could blow up in the Pistons' face, and they could really struggle to end the season. That could happen. The other way to look at it is this could be a good warm-up for the playoffs. The Pistons are going into the playoffs first time ever, first time playing games that serious. They could, for a whole month before the playoffs even start, have had somewhat of like an early playoff experience where they know they're playing these meaningful, super important games against these big-time opponents, and if they can hold themselves up against these guys, against these teams, and beat some of these teams heading into the playoffs, maybe they walk into the playoffs feeling even more confident about themselves, knowing how brutal the schedule is, knowing how important these games are to the standings. If they're able to beat some of these teams that head into the playoffs, like, yeah, we just went through this brutal stretch. We were able to win these games. We knew how important they were, and we were able to beat them anyways. We can do anything. You can walk into the playoffs feeling even better, more confident about what you can do in the playoffs. There's 2 ways this could go. 2 ways this could go. We're going to find out. One thing we do know for sure, though, this end of the season schedule is tough. I mean, this is a tough end. This is a tough end of the season. Like, my God. But let me know what you guys think is going to happen at the end of the season. How well do you think the Pistons are going to do? Do you think they're going to struggle? Where do you think they're going to end up in the standings? Let me know. Comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. Till next time, peace out, everybody.